Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Today will be our last for the year before the holidays. So today's topic is, what can a chess champion and a fighter pilot teach you about innovation? A very hot topic for today. A little bit of the housekeeping. Again, my name is Anna Sue. I am a Vice President of Illuminet, Inc. So again, thank you for joining. A little bit about the housekeeping. So this presentation will be 45 minutes. We'll have a 15-minute Q&A session. We only have one poll question. Just wanted to know if you're reading up on the abstract and what the topic is all about. And if you do have any questions, please put them up in the Q&A, all right? And we'll try and answer them before the end of the session. Before we start, I wanted to make sure that you know a little bit about Illuminet and what we do. So exactly what is Illuminet and what do we do? So we are the IT consultancy business integrator organization. We are helping companies with their IT challenges that include implementing new technology and strategies. We provide expert solutions to protect against vulnerability, bridging any type of gaps. So anything that has to do with even mergers and acquisition and divestitures. But part of that is providing you with thought leadership that concerns innovation. And that's why we have special guests here to help us. So we are happy to be hosting this innovation webinar. And we have expert presenters here as well. And we hope that you'll find today's session very informative. So let's get started. Deb, if you can start, we'll be our moderator for today.
Thanks, Anna.
Oh, actually, before we do start, I forgot I wanted to do a poll question. So let me run through the poll question right now. So if you guys can take a look at this question and see if you can answer it. So who exactly is the chess champion and who is the fighter pilot? If you can start voting now. Just wanted to know if you're aware of who's speaking today. Give a little second. All right, so here are the results. Well, let's start. Sorry, Deb, why don't you go on?
Do we give out prizes if you got it right?
Not today, but maybe next time.
Of course, we couldn't even vote, so
no.
If there was a prize in for getting the right answer, then that'd be worth it, right? Anyway, delighted to be joined by Hugo and Rob today. Thank you so much for making the time. This is a hot topic that we're covering today. More and more clients are asking us to support them with innovation, and we thought, right, let's get two experts together because these guys know all about innovation. And let's have a chat about it. So I'm Deb Edwards. I'm the Chief People Officer at Illuminet, working very closely with Anna and the leadership team in terms of designing and developing a people practice and organizational change management, focusing on 4 key areas, and that's M&A, OD, cultural change management, and ERP and systems implementation. So very much working closely with our clients in supporting them with transformation. And we've got a question on transformation later, so we'll be testing you. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to pass on to our guests for them to introduce themselves.
I'll go first there. I guess I'm next on the slide. Deb, I'm Rob Kerner. I am the fighter pilot one, or ex-fighter pilot. We actually oversold it a little bit on the thing. So there's my helmet. I brought that along. Anna, you were asking about helmets. Yeah, there you go. So I dug that out of the Halloween box upstairs. But yes, I did that job for 10 years coming out of university in the US. And basically after that 10 years, didn't want to be in the Navy and didn't want to be in the airlines like most of my friends are. So I sort of got my MBA in San Diego at the time. And then the last 25 years, I've been working in business. As you can see from my bio, kind of a smattering of kind of corporates, basically half that time in big corporates, Hewlett Packard, RBS, and the other half of that in tech startups. So I think on the innovation space at RBS, I was working in strategy for 3 years. I'm ready to leave the bank. and do something else. As you can tell, I get bored a bit and kind of jump around. And then basically, I was offered a position to start an innovation team in the bank, and we can talk about some of those experiences later. But that might resonate with some of the people that are doing innovation in big corporates. I think one thing I would say is, why does a fighter pilot and kind of innovation team having to do with each other? I mean, in my mind, the fighter pilot world is really kind of about uncertainty and complexity. So, your whole day is just kind of blasting through the sky, literally. Everything is kind of changing from what you thought was going to happen. And there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of complexity kind of multiplied by speed. And I think innovation is a little bit like that. And we'll talk about more as we go along today, but it's a lot of uncertainty. You're trying to break new ground. There's no playbook. You have to be that master builder in kind of the Lego movie. So I think that's why we thought it was kind of interesting to say, what does a fighter pilot have to talk about innovation? We'll cover that a bit more as we go along. But over to you, Hugo. That's enough on me.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, so hi everybody. I don't have a chessboard with me, but I have this. Okay. Do you guys know what this is? You probably heard of the Queen's Gambit. So this is another way of writing Queen's Gambit in our language as chess players. I think chess is not very famous due to Netflix. So yeah, I've been playing chess for a while, not as a professional at the moment, but in the past when I was a young kid with a lot of time, that was my favorite hobby. Let's say, in why chess in innovation, because you're talking about uncertainty, having a strategy. For instance, the Queen Gambit is a strategy. Or how should I start the game? I can't just go to the chessboard and think about how I'm going to start in that precise moment. I need to have a strategy beforehand. So yeah, I've been working in corporate innovation for a while, leading innovation services at Bearing Point, working from Dublin not to the world, but to Europe in particular, which is a specific part of the world, very, very complex, let's say. After that, I went to London to work at Capita to lead the innovation practice as well. And currently, I'm leading the innovation services practice at a new company called Innovation by Kaizen, which is part of the Kaizen Institute Western Europe. So Kaizen is very famous for efficiency, which is a type of innovation. And innovation by Kaizen is going to be very good, we hope, at growth innovation. So it's a different type of innovation. And the challenge for companies nowadays that they need to handle today, usually it's about managing risk, efficiency, but they need to take care of tomorrow and beyond as well. And that's about growth, okay? Different techniques, different incentives. So you need to balance both. Just like in chess, you need to take care of your current situation, but you need to think 7 steps ahead. And that's the challenge that an executive is handling today. Okay, where I am at the moment, the fiscal year, and how can I win in 10 years time, in 7 years time? How can I stay relevant? So yeah, this is me.
Great, thanks, Hugo. Anna, do you wanna? So you've told us a bit more about it. This is a newspaper article that was published this week, and I know there's been lots of media coverage this week in terms of the new role and the new opportunity, and that must be a really exciting prospect for you, Hugo. So, and this is your partner in the picture with you.
Thanks for asking. So yeah, I've started a company a few months ago called Unsettled. We were a growth innovation boutique, and growth innovation is still quite new because, as I said, I think most companies are oriented to the fiscal year, so efficiency, avoiding risk at all costs. Growth innovation is still new. I think we are used to talk about startups, and startups are all about growth, but helping established organizations to stay relevant and at the same time think about what is my next portfolio of business models is quite challenging. So Kaizen, they have decided to bring my company in. And now we are, let's say, the center of excellence for growth innovation in Europe. It's based in Lisbon, our headquarters, but hopefully we can embrace other regions as well, because Kaizen is in more countries. So to be honest, that was the key factor. We could grow much faster by getting married with Kaizen, and I think it's going to be a very successful marriage because we can take care of efficiency and growth at the same time. So a one-stop shop for innovation. Okay, so we are like a health insurance for CEOs, I guess.
Fantastic. Well, watch the space as you as the next sort of couple of months unfold in terms of how your business grows and develops. And so what we want to do is find out a bit more about Inogesis, Rob, and for you to tell us a bit more about how Inogesis works, and over to you on that.
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, as you can tell from the sort of the gears here, we have two sides to the equation, and there's lots of facets to innovation that we'll talk about today. But the area that we really tackle is how do large corporates on the right-hand side, how do they get innovation, impact, and insight? But over on the left-hand side, you've got an entire community of people, and you can't even read the small things there, but these are startups, SMEs, academics. So it's always frustrating to me that you have a kind of a corporate that actually knows the problems that they have and knows, usually knows where they want to be someplace. But then you have this whole group of people in this community over here that have the answers. And it's like, how do we put these two together? And that's what we try to do. So we work with large corporates from that side off of challenges, and we work with the other side, the innovator community, to engage and then curate and deliver. So that's kind of our role in the middle, is how do you engage with that community, because it's almost too big, right? There's almost too many things. So what you find is people either they just ask Hugo and say, Hugo, what do you think is the best AI engine? And you say, this is it. And they say, well, he must know. So they take it. Or they go the other way and they just kind of get bogged down in kind of looking at too many things, and kind of the whole thing just kind of grinds to a halt. So we try to take away some of that pain, working through that pipeline.
Great, thanks, Rob. And in terms of, the topic that we're covering today around innovation, so I'm hearing a lot from different clients as they want to, grow and develop and rethink their strategy, saying to me, yeah, we need to think more about innovation if we're going to stay competitive. So over to you guys in terms of just giving us an overview. Why is innovation important? I mean, you both have very different approaches, but equally both as important. So why do you think it's important? To go to you, Hugh, go first.
Thank you very much. So it's about creating value, not just capturing value. And I guess that organizations are really optimized to capture value, but not to create value. And that might be fine, or it was fine probably 40 years ago, where it was very hard, let's say, to start a new business, new digital business, for instance, because technology was very expensive, access to knowledge was very hard. Nowadays, it's very easy to challenge a large organization by starting a smaller one with no corporate politics or no corporate BS, just to make this conversation more informal. So access to technology is quite easy. We have cloud, we can subscribe to services, we can hire people anywhere in the world, and COVID is helping on that matter as well. So if an established organization is not optimized to find the next product, the next service that will create value, meaning solving a problem in a better way, okay, others will, because it's very easy to explore new and valuable things nowadays. So and the awkward thing is when we learn strategy, business strategy, we learn that innovation is part of the strategy. But when we go to a company as an executive, we have the pressure, shareholder pressure and all of that. We forget about that chapter. We focus on the fiscal year. I talk a lot about this, keep the lights blinking in the data center, keep the clients happy. But what about your next generation of clients, your next generation of products and services? And the other challenge is innovation does not equal to technology. And many people think, okay, the CTO is responsible for it. Technology is innovation. So it's quite a mess in the boardroom, when at the literacy level, we still don't know the difference between one and another, but I guess we can talk about that later. Rob, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I echo all the things you said. I mean, it never goes second, right? Hugo doesn't get to go first anymore. But no, I'm just kidding. No, that's fine. But I think it's about. I mean, organizations, especially big organizations, are very good at kind of change management and kind of incremental changes, right? And so it's almost been built into our brain. We're constantly looking for new ways to get faster and better. And what you see is they're getting faster and better on the wrong things. So, I mean, I use an example from the bank. We had a team that was looking at the mortgage process, right? So you can imagine, anyone who's been through a mortgage process knows oh my God, what takes it so long, right? There's checks, there's this, there's paperwork, back and forth. So it takes a long time to do, too long from a customer's perspective. So let's just say it was, say, 20 days to get an average mortgage. So there was absolutely teams attacking that 20 days, and they were getting it down to 19 days and 18 days. And they were kind of opening the champagne saying, wow, we kind of changed this process and we changed this. But, meanwhile, back to Hugo's point, there's digital companies that are basically attacking the same problem, saying, well, let's just do this all digitally. And they were doing a mortgage application digitally in probably 1 to 2 days. So you can just imagine all the wasted energy trying to go from 20 days to 18 days. And basically along comes a startup that says, 18, how about 2 days, right? So the gap is so massive that it's completely irrelevant what you've been working on. And that's where companies just get knocked out. And of course, these startups are all attacking high value areas, right? Because they don't attack low profit areas, they attack high profit areas. And they all came from those large organizations, but many came from large organizations. They almost like, they know how the inner workings are, right? So they know where the weak points are. So to why a big company needs to do that is all those factors, plus the ones that Hugo mentioned, makes it imperative that they're kind of constantly thinking, okay, forget incremental. I mean, keep going incremental, of course, but think, what's the next thing I need to be doing, and start in a whole new place.
So when a CEO turns around, or a board member turns around and says, I want to do more in the innovation space, what's your advice back to them, Rob?
Yeah, it's a common thing. I think the question is, what do you mean by that? So it follows by that 10 more questions. So and this is very true. I mean, back in my experience, and I'm sure Hugo, you had a very similar experience in large organizations. So my first day on the job in innovation, I was up on stage talking to the entire top 150 of the business banking, and my brief was, be innovative or something like that. Like, be cool. And it was like, are you kidding? So I think it's my question back to the CEO and the board is, what are you trying to do? You understand what you're trying to do with this function? You wouldn't set up a kind of a finance function saying, okay, just kind of make it up as you go along now. And that's kind of what happens. They bring somebody in, or they bring someone, new team, and they kind of figure it out. So my advice would be, before you start doing that, start to think about what this process is and what is this actual function doing. And I think, I'll pass to Hugo for your points as well.
You are the expert, Rob. Well, I guess at the moment I'm getting questions like, why is my innovation lab not working? So some of them don't know where they want to innovate, but they started a lab. Why? Because it's fancy, it's cool, beanbags. So I guess Professor Steve Blank calls that innovation theater. Okay, when we have post-its in workshops, but the where, Rob, you mentioned that, where do you want to innovate? What does innovation mean to you? It's the first question. Okay, usually what I do is I walk around the office and I ask different people, sorry, what does it mean to innovate here in your organization? And if I ask 10 people, I get 10 different answers. So when I talk with the CEO or the board member, I'm like, you know what? I just talked with Mary, and she told me that innovation is new ways of working. I talked with John, and innovation is a new data center. So sorry, what does innovation mean in this organization? Because there are different perspectives. And this should be the starting point if you want to take innovation seriously. So when they don't get the difference between innovation practice and innovation at the strategic level, there's a problem, and it needs to be fixed, or else they will be spending a lot of money in workshops, in technology, like we mentioned before, Rob, and no value will pop up on the P&L, and that's the problem. So then shareholders will ask, sorry, we spent 10% of the budget. Where's the value? Where's the top line getting better? Or why isn't it getting better?
We've seen a lot of big organizations, aren't we, that have like a strategy team in place, and they may have an innovation team. Do you think that's the way to go then, that they need, dedicated resource in place to tackle the strategy and the innovation questions that come through?
I mean, to me, those two are kind of symbiotic, right? It's like you've got a strategy team, which is by definition sort of looking forward and trying to find opportunities and threats and make a strategy out of that. But you have an innovation team, which is actually sort of out there in the real world, we'll call it, seeing new things. So to me, what needs to be happening is these two teams need to be feeding each other. So the strategy teams need to be pointing those guys in the right direction of where to try and help me innovate, because I have a big threat coming over here. I have a big opportunity here. And then the innovation people should be pushing back to strategy, saying, look, we forget all of that, right? Things have already jumped to here.
Yeah.
So I think the two teams are quite important, but they are different functions, but they need to be connected up.
And then I guess they also need to go out to providers such as, you know, boutique firms like you've got, Hugo, in terms of getting some further support in terms of, you know, that kind of thinking, because you're across many organizations, aren't you?
Yeah, so one of the things I would like to add is that there's a need to have an incentive. So for example, when I play chess, okay, if I'm playing chess with a friend, the incentive is to win. It's just that, okay, it's fun. It's to have fun, right? At the end of the day, okay. If I'm in a tournament, there's an incentive. I can get money, okay, and the recognition in all of that. So it kind of helps to stay more focused, okay. It's not just for fun. There's an incentive. And what I've noticed is that in many organizations, the incentive is precisely the opposite of innovation. It's to avoid risk. Failure is not an option. It's to avoid risk. So how do you want to innovate if the incentive system, it's all about avoiding risk? So if it is strategic, the incentive system was revisited and shaped to incentivize people to go out of their comfort zone, to try new things, to experiment, even smaller things like, you know, disagree with your boss during a meeting, being able to share a different perspective. And this is tied with culture. So you need to adapt the culture as well, because to innovate, you need to become innovative. And this is very, very hard. We can bring the methods. We don't shape the incentive system, which means we won't shape the culture. I really believe the culture is tied together with the incentive system. These things go hand in hand. So if you really want to innovate systematically, yes, you do need a process, but incentive and culture need to be revisited as well. This is one of the things I strongly recommend.
No, I agree.
Often.
And then we're seeing a lot of businesses going through technology transformation at the moment. And do you think there's a difference between innovation and technology transformation? And if so, what are the differences? Who wants to go first?
Let Hugo take it first. You've done more tech transformation than I have. So, I mean.
Well, the first thing is people don't get the difference between digital transformation and innovation. So these two buzzwords are quite popular. Just go on Google Trends and you will notice that. But when we talk about technology, usually companies use technology to reduce costs, to automate something, to make it faster. So it's about efficiency innovation. Digital transformation goes in there, okay? Okay, it might improve sales as well. It might improve the customer experience. That's quite popular at the moment with conversational AI, chatbots, and all of that. What usually I don't hear customers talk about is how can technology shape my business model? Can we revisit the business model and not just the operating model? So talking about business model innovation is still quite hard, because usually the CEO thinks innovation equals to technology. So my point of contact is the CTO. And when I talk about business models with the CTO, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because he's not connected with this type of mindset. So my first challenge is to find the right person in the organization where I can talk about how can technology shape your business model. And the example I like to give is Uber. Okay, it was a tech platform. Everybody could develop that platform. At the time, the technology was there, but the business model was different. So the discussion wasn't about the technology, it was about the business model. And this is usually my challenge, to be able to talk about business model innovation and not just, okay, let's do RPA, which is quite famous at the moment. Let's do AI, big data, and all of those buzzwords. I like to talk about business model. That's my goal, try to find the right person to talk about this, because this will create value. Technology will improve efficiency. Maybe you will get better reviews in your call center or wherever, but finding your next generation of business models is the key thing for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just from my side, Deb, I mean, just a couple of things. I mean, just to build on that, it's where you start the conversation. So to me, the tech transfer starts from the tech transformation starts from where you are, and as Hugo articulated, you try to fix that and make it better. You put new technology in, you kind of replumb the systems, right? Whereas innovation to me always starts someplace else. So, I mean, just a very quick example from the bank again. I was there. One of the biggest problems in a bank is kind of when someone loses their debit card. So it costs the bank quite a bit of money. It's a very high pain point for people. You've lost your credit card, your debit card. It usually happens when you're on holiday, right? So you're in Spain, you lose your debit card, and they say, you call the bank, say, I need a new debit card. Yep, we'll send it to your house in the UK. Like, well, I'm kind of in Spain here. Like, I need it here, not there. So, you know, what a normal tech transformation thing would be to attack that problem, all the processes, the handoffs. How do we speed it up again? How do we do that? And when I was talking to the team, I said, did you guys think about calling DHL? Or they're like, DHL, what do you mean DHL? I'm like, well, it's really it's a shipping problem, right? It's a little piece of plastic that has to go someplace, and there's a verification process. That's the issue, right? And all of a sudden, their whole faces just kind of went ashen. And so I don't start where they were. I start someplace else, right? And that's kind of, to me, is about innovation, is starting in a different space.
And I think that's what's unique about talking to you two, because your mindset is slightly different, because it's geared in such a different way and that's what makes a great team, isn't it? That you all wear different hats. So Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats is a great one to think about. When, if you haven't done it, then you should try it. Just put, a different hat on. So if you're in HR, put the finance hat on. If you're the if you're the finance person, put the CEO's hat on. And that
Absolutely
really works, actually. And I've seen this when I've been supporting clients with operating model reviews as well. Going back to your point, Hugo, one of the things I always do is start at the strategy and the vision and where you're going as a business before we even think about tech or putting people into a new operating model. And what does that need to look like first, even before you move forward with that journey? And Rob, some of the challenges that you've been working on at Inogesis in particular, some of the key, those key challenges that you get to work on. I don't know if you're able to talk about any of them, but they're really interesting ones in terms of how you support an internal sort of innovation strategy team.
Yeah, I mean, we can't give exact details, but what I would say is that a lot of people come to us with the problem statement, right? As you can imagine, right? This is our problem. And what we tend to do, back to what I just explained, is we don't ever start in that space, right? We kind of go backwards and forwards, and we look all around that problem. And a lot of times we'll come back and we'll refine that problem. So either by asking questions, or another way is looking into that innovator community and finding new technologies that they didn't even think about. So it's almost like someone gave you an RFP and said, I need to do these A, B, C, and D. And they said, well, we already found one that does actually all those, but it does E as well. And they go, well, now I want that, right? So all of a sudden the RFP kind of like gets more rich. And I think that's something that's intangible to kind of, it's not the way most people work. Most people say, can you find me one of these widgets? Yep, I'll go find it. I think, because back to the way our brains are a bit wired, we never start there. We kind of start a much wider circle, and then kind of work our way back in. And I think it gives a much better, richer answer before we even start the kind of conversation about technology. Yeah.
And just going back to your point, Hugo, where you were saying, when you talking to certain individuals about innovation, what it means to them, and how different the word innovation is sort of thought of by other individuals. I mean, your business name, Innovation by Kaizen, is Japanese for continuous improvement. Tell us about the Center of Excellence that you're putting in place and how that is shaping and how you're going to support clients with, the different sort of areas that you're thinking about as part of the model.
Okay, so first of all, Kaizen, it's a Japanese word for continuous and better improvement. So continuous improvement, okay? And continuous improvement, as we probably know, it's about small changes with no risk or very small amount of risk on a daily basis, which is fine. So companies need this type of improvement. Innovation, in the other hand, with a big I, or in caps, it's about radical and disruptive changes. Okay, which we are usually not programmed to introduce those changes to our organization in our lives. So the Center of Innovation, or Innovation by Kaizen, is a place where organizations can find all the skills, okay, to come up with an idea, to experiment that idea out of the business as usual. Because if you don't go out of your building, sometimes it's very hard to be able to think differently, even to think differently. So they will find all the skills in there. So design skills, makers or software developers, where they can easily prototype something using low code, no code, which is becoming very popular at the moment, which means that we can run, for instance, a design sprint, and in 5 to 10 days, we can get something out, test it with real users. Then with that data, we can confirm if we are going in the right direction, if we need to pivot, or just kill that idea because it's stupid. But it's okay to have stupid ideas, which is fine. So running this type of sprint is one of the things we can do. Another thing is we can actually shape the innovation strategies. So we start by understanding what is the problem or where you want to innovate, and this is the most important question. Then we shape the innovation bets. Okay, we like to use the famous 3 horizons model. Okay, so what are the bets for today, for the incremental improvements, let's say, and then what are the bets for tomorrow, more on the radical and disruptive space. And many of these bets don't need to be developed inside of your organization. So actually, what we are prepared to do before we start to work with a client is a bit of a lecture of how to innovate. Okay, you need different horizons of innovation. You need bets. You need a budget. Many organizations don't have a budget for innovation because they think it's technology and it's pretty hard. And then you need to allocate that budget to different horizons. Okay, it's becoming popular. For instance, venture capital. Many companies already know there's something called CVC, or corporate venture capital, but then they don't have the skills to manage this venture capital. Should we buy a startup? Should we get 10% of those guys over there that are developing something cool? So we are, let's say, the co-pilot. We have a pilot here. We are the co-pilot of the CEO or the fractional chief innovation, let's say, because we have all the skills from the practice to the boardroom to be your strategic advisor in what regards innovation. But we are doers. And I think that's what makes a difference at Kaizen. It's because we come from industry. Okay, so we work directly with the people that build things. Okay, so we are not the slide deck type of people. So yes, we can do that. We can share our screen, but we will work side by side with you. This is our pitch to clients, and this is actually what we practice. Okay.
Yeah, that makes a difference, doesn't it? And
I think one thing on that, sorry, I wanted to build off the part about speed you mentioned, and it's like it's quite important. I think if you talk to really good salespeople, they say the best salespeople are people who close quickly or people who qualify out quickly. So right, it's that when they know that deal is going a long time, the hair on the back of their neck stands up because they think, oh boy, this is bad, right? And I think that's the way innovation is too in an organization. So you have an idea, you tell a story. Innovation teams are really almost like an internal sales team, practically, for the technology. You find yourself running around explaining all the benefits and the features of this innovation and what it's going to do for the organization. You do objection handling, all of those things. So you're really a salesperson. So and the speed is quite important because you kind of tell a story. This is going to save us, 20 million a year, right? Wow, everyone gets excited. The longer that takes to materialize, and especially if you look at from the CFO's perspective, who sort of signs those checks saying, here's a new innovation lab, here's a new, we need a couple 100,000 just to do a proof of concept, but don't worry, it's going to make us 10 million. And what they don't see is the 10 million ever, right? So eventually they start to go, well, all I'm doing is I'm writing checks and I'm not seeing that return coming back. So there's lots of reasons why that slows down in a large organization, especially, but that speed is kind of absolutely critical to really kind of move it through and either, as you say, kill it off or take it faster.
But it's very hard to run inside an organization because the BDC as usual takes over your agenda all the time. So if there's a safe place where you can test very quickly, where you can say this is stupid, because you need this comfort as well, like psychological comfort, you need, or psychological safety. You need a specific safe space to do this if your idea is too far from your core business, because that's not incremental improvement. Okay, so testing things that are far from the core business. Inside the core business, you are really brave, okay, or you have support from the top, or else it's going to be really hard, because that organization is prepared to prepare the core, and that's fine, and that's really fine. So you need that space. You don't need to jump directly and spend millions in a lab. Just Google, they started a famous program where people during Friday afternoon, they could develop something. And many good things that we use today, like Google Maps, for instance, were developed in that part-time, let's say. Like I'm an employee, I have an idea, I don't need to ask for budget or authorization, I have Friday afternoon. This is an example of investing of time. You don't need to invest money, allowing people to test things. And the other thing you mentioned is a CFO. Even to innovate in the radical and disruptive space, you can't have a CFO worried about, okay, this is not in the P&L. You need a business angel type of CFO. So the CFO needs two different hats as well. There's a CFO for today and the CFO for tomorrow. And that will think like an investor. So I will give you small bets like 5K, test something, show me results. I will probably give you 50K right after, okay, like seed funding. Okay, so 2 months, 50K, develop your minimum viable product. I want to know if customers are using this, if they are paying, even if it is €1 or 2 per user, in the future might be 20 or 50 or whatever, depending on your business model. So even the CFO needs this type of, let's say, literacy of the radical and disruptive space. And another thing is that they also need to understand, and I went through this many times, that startups, many times they get 100K, 150 to test an idea. And then when an employee goes to the CFO or CEO, hey, I need to develop something, they only get nothing. They don't get nothing. So a startup gets 50, 100, and an employee gets 0.
Yeah.
Because there isn't a program. The innovation agenda is not defined at all. So actually it's easier for the employee to say, goodbye, I'm going to do this using a BA, B2B essential funding, and then I will probably take over your company. And this happens many times. Like Bill Gates, for instance, right? He was working at IBM. I have an idea, a personal computer. People will have a computer inside on top of their desk one day. IBM said, no, sorry, but we sell mainframes. So this happened before.
And I wonder if businesses do actually reach out to their employees for them to drop in a piece of paper with their challenging idea. I worked for a company about 20 years ago, and they actually did that. They encouraged people to put their challenging idea into this box, and that was down in reception. Whatever the idea was, they used to review it, the leadership team, and then if your idea was selected, then you were part of the team to help bring it to life. And I thought that was quite innovative at the time. A few years ago, I was obviously very young at that time, but it was just I haven't seen that in any other organization, I have to say, done in that way. And I think it was quite forward thinking for that time. And listen, I'm thinking that we should give our listeners a time to think about any questions they want to ask, because I know that we're going to close for questions soon. So I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes just to post any of your questions through the Q&A whilst we're just finalising here. And I've got a final sort of question to ask Rob and Hugo, which is to give us their sort of advice in terms of, as a leader of a business, or if you're a CEO, CIO, or a board member, or somebody in a role where you do need to be thinking more about implementing innovation, giving you some advice on the steps that you need to follow, even to think about putting something in place. So Rob has 5 steps, Hugo has 3 steps. Obviously, Rob has won this one. So, Rob, you want to go through your step approach?
Like the 7-minute abs, yeah. So why 7 minutes? Yeah.
I'm going to write 10 steps now. Okay, I'll go back
Yeah,
in a second.
exactly.
10 steps.
I mean, I think in general, just stepping back. I mean, one of the reasons we tried to make the title about a chess champion and a fighter pilot was really about there's 2 really important parts to this exercise, right? There's a strategic piece, and that involves, thinking ahead, as Hugo was talking about, but also I think knowing the language, right? So in the chessboard, you don't know how the pieces won't work, you're not going to have any chance. If you don't know the standard move, so if someone does this and this, we do this, right? So you're already going to be out here. So I think it's about upskilling yourself in the language and it's like just like when you sort of maybe weren't familiar with finance, and all of a sudden you were kind of having to deal with the CFO giving you all these terms about cash this and days of this, and you kind of thought, geez, I better learn some of these skills, right? And what do these words mean, and what do they mean to the business? So I think innovations is the same thing. It's a discipline that there is a language around it, and not knowing that is a major problem, right? And you just got to get yourself in there and figure it out. There's a couple of books, of course, we can always recommend. The other side of it is why the fighter pilot side, which is about, I think fighter pilots are a slightly different mindset than other pilots, even in that, we certainly plan ahead. We know what our plane is good at. We know what other planes are good at. We know what the landscape from a threat looks like. We know what the weather looks like. But, having done it, I can tell you that the second you pop off the front of a ship, it all changes, right? So you get up there, the plane isn't working the way it was supposed to work. It's always breaking. So, I think in innovation, it's a little bit like the strategy is quite important, but the ability to adapt to changes in that strategy that are happening is almost more important, right? So, that's my 2 cents on it. I mean, Hugo, what do you think?
Completely agree with you, but my 3 steps approach is even better.
That's why I left it for you, man. There you go.
To keep it very simple, I think first of all we need to understand what's the specific case. So step number 1, understand your situation, your case. So if you are a bank, for instance, okay, your innovation thesis might be we want to become the best bank for people from 8 to 12, for younger people. Okay, so exactly what type of ideas you need, because if you know the idea box, that's fine, but you will get crazy ideas in there, like let's open a restaurant, let's go to the moon. So you need to frame down the innovation areas, okay, so that people know, okay, we need constraints. That's the key thing in innovation. We need constraints, okay? When we learn design thinking, we talk a lot about constraints, time constraints, subject constraints. So where you want to innovate, okay, and you need to share that with people. That's very important. So a shared definition of innovation in where we want to innovate. Second step is to define a solution in a roadmap. Okay, how are we going to go? How are we going to get there? For instance, the things that we are going to develop internally, okay, inside our own innovation lab, for instance, and the things that we are going to develop externally, like partnering with an incubator or accelerator, getting equity from a startup. So different types of bets, depending on how far your idea is from the core, okay? And the third thing is it needs implementation or execution as well. So if you don't have a proper team, and now it's becoming popular to have innovation managers, maybe not popular yet, but it will become. In the past, it was the project manager. Okay, project management is very famous, like PMI, project management body of knowledge. Innovation management, it's becoming a thing because it's a different body of knowledge. You need to know how to articulate methods, okay? So project managers are like agile space, like Scrum, Kanban, PMI, change management problem, blah, 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 communication. Innovation managers, they know how to articulate lean startup, design thinking, service design, growth hacking, pirate metrics, business model innovation, business model canvas, this type of tools, how these tools work together, okay? And how to measure innovation as well. So an innovation manager will have to study innovation accounting because the metrics are not revenue. The metrics are probably usage, or if users are coming back, traction, growth rate, okay? So 3 steps: define the problem where you want to innovate, then define the solution, how. There are different models. But remember one thing, this is like playing chess. I can teach you how to start the game, how to win the game. There are models. We can buy books about this, or can go to YouTube. In my time, I would have to buy a book. It was harder. But I cannot tell you how to win. You can learn the moves, tactics. I can teach you how to win. And I guess that's the same thing where you are inside an F-14. Like, you know how to pilot the airplane, but nobody can tell you, okay, do this, do that, and you will win. You will probably have a better chance to win, but there's uncertainty. You need to manage that. So these are the 3 steps. So define the problem, solution, and roadmap, and have a proper team to be able to execute.
Thank you, Hugo. Anna, have we had any questions in?
Yes, we do. And thank you for your question. So one of the question is, any thoughts about innovation in the public space, government, healthcare, education, defense?
I think I can help on that. I've been working a lot with governments in different countries, and it's very hard because they don't have, or they do, but they think they don't have competition. And without competition, it's very hard to get, that sense of urgency. This is my key thought about it. But either way, they are trying to innovate, in particular, is designing better services. So if 10 years ago, governments would think of innovation like a new online service, now it's becoming a standard to think about the usage. Are people adopting that service in particular? End of the day, because there's no competition, in my opinion, the secret is to find the right leaders that understand the importance to innovate, because usually governments, they have money. So budget is not the problem, but having the right leadership makes all the difference, because without competition, what's left? The person who's in charge. From my experience in more than one country. Okay, Rob, what do you think about public?
Yeah, very
innovation?
difficult, as you say. I think you touched on a great point about the leaders, and I think the big mistake is that people always think it has to be the person who's in authority. So it's and it's normally not that person. I find it's normally somebody further in the organization down who is maybe a bit hungry, a bit kind of frustrated, but has enough power to move it up. So it's someone in that middle area that's on a rising star. And if you can get that person to sort of, get something moving, back to our discussion about speed and kind of storytelling, kind of get the story as live as fast as possible, then people come on board. But I find kind of starting top down in those type of organizations is very difficult, because as you mentioned earlier about the risk, there's and risk and incentive. So what's the point of this? I'm going to retire in 3 or 4 years. I mean, I'm not going to try to break this, and there's not, and as a society, we don't have a lot of empathy for mistakes. I mean, you follow the news today, or any little mistake is sort of amplified, in the press or in social media or within, in your career. So it's no wonder that people are risk averse. So, but someone who's maybe a bit more junior, it might be a little bit less risk averse and can take that. And, as a senior leader, you can always take credit when it goes well. And if it goes wrong, you say, well, hey, he tried hard and failed fast. So.
Yeah, great question. And I've worked in businesses before where they've introduced a Y suite, actually, instead of just having a C suite. Just you're going back to your point there, Rob, and, looking at some of those ideas that come out from junior team members, and actually some great ideas were coming out from a very junior level. Great question. Thanks, Anna. Have we got any more?
I actually have one. So before we talked about large companies, they usually create sort of like a global innovation center to really focus on innovation. And you guys talked about the 3 steps and 5 steps on approaching innovation. Do these steps differ if you're a company on a small level, medium level versus big level?
I think the challenge with those innovation centers, and Hugo, you have good experience with this, and I'll throw my 2 cents out, and then you can jump in with some real life experience. But it's that if it goes, it's such a hard thing. So if it goes too far out on the side, it basically becomes a little, kind of innovation lab for the sake of innovation, and they're just in their own think tank thinking about robots and what could happen in the future with AI, and oh my gosh, and they're too disconnected from the business. So when it comes back to the business, it gets crushed. So the mothership will kill it. Too far into the business, and basically the machine will crush it because it will try to slow it down because it's not made to go fast. Large organizations are meant to go slow and slowly because that's how they manage the massive scale and out of the business. So it's quite a tricky one. So I mean, the one example I remember was in Lego. I always talk about was it's a physical product which helps a little bit, but they actually built the innovation lab was in the middle of the factory. So it was actually a little factory in the middle of the factory, and they had every function was there. Marketing was there, packaging was there, and they had a very clear plan on how they were going to launch, what that team was allowed to do. So one country, one product, up to 10,000 units, whatever it was. But the part that was very clever was that when there was an issue around packaging, that packaging person could just pop out to the real factory where all the packaging people were and ask them questions. So embedding it somehow into that, but it's such a tricky thing. I mean, Hugo, you have a lot of experience with these sort of innovation labs. I mean,
in smaller businesses, probably usually is literacy. So the person leading that small business, he doesn't understand this, so it's quite complex. So when I don't understand something, I will probably avoid immediately. Okay, it's not my case, but usually people, when they don't understand and they are a leader, they won't be able to tell you, please help me. They don't like to do that. Leaders think they know everything. So in small businesses, it's very, very hard. Imagine restaurants, okay, COVID, restaurants, we know what happened, okay? Can these steps apply to them? Of course, that's why there are now entrepreneurs thinking about ghost kitchens, dark kitchens. So in that space, there's also a way to innovate. But literacy is still the problem. And in going back to literacy, if you guys take an MBA, it will be all about managing the fiscal year, efficiency, risk management, operations management, etc. Okay, the percentage of time when you think about radical and disruptive in business model innovation is probably 1%, 0.5% of an MBA. Go check that in different universities, and you will understand what I mean. For instance, I teach in London, the City University, and what I teach is about radical and disruptive growth using data. It's called strategic business and analytics. But this is an example, but you won't find many where we talk about this. So we don't talk about efficiency. How can data help you to become more efficient? No. How can we radically improve your organization? How can we find a disruptive business model with data? And this is a master's degree. Okay, so I guess these students, maybe they will become future CEOs. And by the way, 50% of my students are from Asia. Because Asia is leading the innovation space. Okay, IP, patents, and all of that coming from China at the moment. This, Europe, this, US might be, I think it's here, a bit on top, but Asia, they are leading and they are sending their kids to London to study this type of things. And we were trained to avoid risk. Failure is not an option. Okay, do as your manager told you to do. So we need to study these two different worlds. I'm not saying you don't need to take care of today. You do need to take care of today, but you need to become ambidextrous. And training to become ambidextrous is not natural. So you need to force it. It's going to be painful, but as a leader, as a CEO, if you don't do it, others will. And this is the reality. And I'm quite famous for that, for telling you the reality in your face, which is quite hard for me sometimes, but that's what I do. So.
Great, thanks, Sana. Any other questions in?
No other question at this time.
Okay, so do we want to carry on chatting? Have you got your coffee there, Rob and Hugo?
I have
we can keep going forever, but I mean, I'm giving people, yeah.
I have my Top Gun playlist now, if you guys want to list for you, Rob.
Yeah, the playlists, they're very good, yeah.
Rob, you should at least put your helmet on for us.
Yeah, the helmet. I did bring down my other stuff. I brought down. This is actually pretty interesting. So this little thing here is a hook point from an F-14. So basically, if you imagine there's a massive plane, and this little thing, which is quite heavy though, is what stops the plane. So the wire goes around here as the plane comes into the ship, and it's it was sort of given to me as I was leaving because it gets used every, whatever it is, 500 landings, and then they sort of throw it over the side. But it's it was like a lifesaver. But then I always think about the hooks that you find in business that are stopping you all the time. So it's, the word hook can kind of be played on two ways there, but yeah.
Just write a book about that.
Write a book about the hook. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, the hook, called The Hook.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that they gave it to you rather than you pinching it.
Oh yeah, I could do that too. No, it was given to me. My team was the guys who took care of those things. So
Right. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time today. And if we have no other questions, Anne, I think let's leave it there and give everyone 4 minutes back.
Sure. Mhm. All right. Well, I do definitely want to thank Deb, Rob, and Hugo for the session. Everyone on the attending, please feel free to reach out to us if you have if you have an interest in continuing with the innovation conversation. I think this was a great conversation. Our attendees, again, thank you for attending our webinar, and I hope that the chess champion, Hugo, and the fighter pilot, Rob, has provided you with something to think about on how your organization can benefit by providing innovation into your business. So please check us out on the website in illuminet.co to register for any new webinars that are coming up in 2022. And since this is our last webinar for 2021, I want to wish you all a happy and safe holiday and all the best for a fantastic 2022. So thank you so much.
thanks, Anna. Yeah, thanks, Deb.
Guys, see you soon.
Thank
Yeah.
you all. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Take care, Hugo. Have a good one.
Take care.